Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. This is your one-stop shop to learn the business side of your practice on a deeper level. On this show, we empower you to own your CEO status to scale your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit. Listen in as we talk about how to market your practice to gain more visibility, hire, build, and engage your ride or die dream team, create streamlined operations, and make financial decisions as a CEO. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. It's Brandy, and I am so excited to talk all about something that is going to give you freedom, something that's going to make your life so much easier on the business side, on the personal side, something that will allow for you to not be overwhelmed, burned out, tired, exhausted, or whatever feelings that you're feeling maybe at this point in time. Or maybe everything is going well. I'm not tired. I'm not exhausted. I'm feeling lovely. Everything's great, fantastic, sunshine and roses. This something will still give you more of that, more of the feeling of everything's great, wonderful, sunshine and roses and unicorns and everything else. So for today's episode, regardless of the boat that you're sitting in as you're listening to this something is your key. And this something is, drum roll please, delegation. So the title of today's conversation is There is Freedom in Delegation. Now for me, I used to say, I am the queen of delegation. Like there was nothing, like once I started to own my CEO status, because you guys know, like my journey has been, I was tired, burned out, exhausted, not leveraging my team, working all the hours, the early mornings, the late nights, the weekends, just like, oh my gosh, missing like the important moments of my life with my kids' life and my significant other, wanting to take a vacation. And I'm sitting at my desk doing work. I think I sound like Rihanna, but we don't have the rights to her work song, so I'm not going to do that. But one of the things that I did not do effectively was delegate, was to get things off of my plate. And once I started to own my CEO status, I became a delegation queen because I started to see, oh, if I leverage my team and I'm able to actually give things away that they can do better than what I can, this is amazing. This is so lovely. Like they could get it done in an hour when it would take me like 3 days to do, or they could get done with it in like 2 days when it would take me like 3 weeks to do. So all the things that we hear about delegation and when you delegate effectively, so I'm going to throw that in there because there is delegating and then there is delegating effectively. And a lot of times people delegate and they don't do it effectively, which causes them what I call the boomerang effect, right? So they give it and then they take it back. And they give it and then they take it back. And they feed themselves lines of, oh, well, my team just can't help me with it. Or, well, I guess I just have to do it myself. Or I guess, I'm just stuck, because no one can do it as good as I can. And so it's just like a cycle that we get into, right? But once I started to recognize, oh, if I can delegate effectively and I set my team up for success, or I'm delegating to the right person who can actually help me and is trained to help me, game over, game over. So that's where my days became more effective, more efficient. I was more productive. I was able to get things done. I was making it home at a decent hour. I wasn't missing out on things. So everything that you want is on the other side of delegation, which is why I always say there's freedom on the other side of delegation. But there's a lot of mindset shifts that have to happen, a lot of effective communication styles that need to take place. And delegation isn't a one size fits all, right? So you can read on social media all day long. What is there, like delegate to elevate. um, like don't be the doer, be the delegator, like all kinds of sayings that you'll see around delegation. And most times when we see delegation or the image of delegation, it's somebody who has delegated, they've hired, they have a team, and they're sipping cocktails on the beach and everything looks fantastic. And I will tell you that is true. So those images, I'm not going to knock them. And I'm not going to say it's not true, but you have to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. So going back, queen of delegation. Queen of delegation. Yep, 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 yep. So I used my clinical managers, I used my site coordinators, I used my front desk leads, I've used my directors, like everything in order to make sure I was set up for success. Now, here's the thing, when I started my business, ooh, let me tell you, what do you want me to do? You mean I knew when I started my business, I was taking on way too much. So I was able to recognize that because of my business experience and my leadership experience. And I knew I was doing things like setting up like automations and stuff that I wasn't any good at. And I was having to research, or even some of like the marketing mindset shifts that I've had to make over the years, which I've talked about. All of that led me to hire sooner than what most folks will inside of their business. Like I was looking, I was like, who can I delegate to? Like I need to bring that person on today. And I did that. So I hired early in my business. And I'm excited that I did that because that person is still with me 4 years later. However, I had a hard time and I wasn't prepared for that. I was not prepared to have a hard time. I wasn't prepared for some of the things that came up for me as I was giving her, social media graphics, or hey, can you help me with this email newsletter? Or hey, can you reach out to this person? Or hey, can you, write up this policy and procedure? Like I wasn't prepared for the sense of perfection that I was going to be taking on, or the like, this isn't right. Oh goodness, like we can't put this out. My name is all over this. Like, what is going on? And so the queen of delegation went out the window, and so everything that you're going through when it comes to delegation, I'm saying this because I don't want to come from a place of, oh, guys, I got like almost 2 decades worth of business management and leadership experience, and I've had all these teams and I've hired hundreds of people. And so when it comes to delegation, it's easy. It's so easy. No, I'm coming from a place of, I've been where you're at. I know exactly what you're going through. And I know the fear of when you think like you're going to mess it up and there's going to be a complaint on the other side of that and you're going to ruin my reputation and the whole business is going to go burning down because you made a mistake. I know that. I've felt that. I've been through that. And I've actually gone above and beyond to work on it because I'm like, I know I have it in me to delegate. I know I do. And I do. And I do. So fast forward to today, I'm continuously always hiring, in my business. I'm making sure that I'm setting myself up for success. I'm able to check the mindsets that I have of knowing, okay, just because you sent out an email, now maybe I wouldn't have technically said some of the things, that might have been in this email, and I want to change it or use perfection towards it. It's fine. It's fine. Like it is fine. Your team at the end of the day are better than what you are. And I did experience this, with because I have a clinical background. And I remember I started working in a cardiology practice and I was like, oh, I can help. What? Oh my goodness, girl, sit down. Sit down, because no, I could not help. I was in the way. I became a bottleneck. They were mad. They appreciated the fact that I was trying, but they would have to go in, rework it. I messed it up. Same thing with like admin. Used to be amazing. Like I could check them in, check them out, billing, like all the stuff. That was me. That was me back in the day. That was me. I was so good at it. So good at it. And then I tried it, after I started to hire people, I would try to cover, AKA cover for people. And that didn't work. It did not work. I knew enough about the position in order to know like something's wrong here, something looks off, or something is not flowing right. But I could not do it to the ability that I had when I was in that stage of my career and when I was doing it every day. So it's the same thing with your team. Your team is working on things every single day, right? They're in your EHR system, checking in people, checking out people, scheduling people all day long. If you are trying to mimic this, first of all, you're in the weeds of your practice, which is what I'm trying to get you out of. The second thing is you have to recognize there's seasons of growth where you are just going to outgrow the job that you're doing, right? You need to know enough to be dangerous is what I say. You need to know enough to recognize like something's wrong here. So at every stage of business growth, you should become the expert in quotation marks. So air quotes. I'm literally sitting here at my desk with my coffee talking about air quotes. Like there's a season for this. This is not a permanent stop. So sometimes what happens and what I see is like, okay, the boomerang effect. I've delegated, I tried, or I've hired. It didn't work out. So I'm just going to take all this stuff back because that's the solution. I'll just take it back. I could do it. I ran rings around the person who I hired. That means that you made the wrong hire. It doesn't mean that you don't need to delegate or you don't need a team. It means that you need to hire the right person for the right seat for the business, right? And so really making sure that you're paying attention to your season of growth, and especially if you have the desire to grow and scale, then you definitely need to check this mindset and you definitely need to make sure that you're asking yourself the question, why am I wanting to keep everything on my plate? Or if you've hired and fired, if you're in that boat, why am I hiring and why am I firing? Take a minute to stop, pay attention, sit with it for a minute and get really, really clear on what is happening because there's so many emotions that can go into delegation. And there's so many emotions too that once somebody is able to do something at a higher capacity than what you can, you start to feel potentially that I'm not good at this anymore. Something's wrong. Or you start to put yourself in a place of someone could potentially take advantage of me because I can't do this anymore. Right. So there's certain areas in your business that you always have to make sure that you know. One of them is money. You have to know your money. So a lot of times I know folks always start with like the billing first and they can schedule, they can check out, they can collect copays, deductibles, or collect the cash, like whatever your payment model is. But the money piece is important. So I will say, I understand when people are doing their own billing and they don't want to delegate it. I get that to an extent, but at the end of the day, especially in today's healthcare landscape and especially if you're taking insurance, there is definitely a temporary stop with that because if you are not able to be online all day and see all the updates that are happening with payers and all this stuff, and even at the time of this recording, I know that there's some things that are happening with like Change Health and just like the like breaches and everything else too. But if you were not in the streets, in the insurance streets of being able to look at what Blue Cross Blue Shield changed today, or oh my goodness, this now appointment or this now code needs a CPT or needs a prior authorization, or we need to now unbundle this code. Like if you're not able to do that, or now we need to have this medical necessity statement in our documentation. If you are not able to do that, get out of the way and find somebody who can help you. Because when we talk about setting yourself up for success and when we're talking about the freedom and delegation, it is so important for you to understand the mindsets that are getting in your way, the skill set of potentially who you need to delegate that might be getting in the way, and you have to get to a place where you're comfortable delegating. I can't say it any other way. I'm trying to find like, well, how else can I make this point? How else can I make this point? But I can't say it any other way. Like there is so much freedom in delegation, right? And so once you delegate and you do it again effectively, then it's magic. It is magic. So I want to talk through some obstacles that are coming up for you when we're talking about delegation, some things that definitely can get in the way, but I want to make sure that I'm setting you up for success. So here are some tips. When delegation is going right, here are some tips I'm going to provide. I'm going to give you 3 tips to make sure that you are set up for success. So tip number 1, you got to know your team's communication style. And every team member likes to be communicated with differently. Every leadership book that you read is going to talk about communication styles. There is an effective way to communicate and there is a not effective way to communicate. Most times, regardless of our intention, We don't always communicate the way that we think that we communicate. We think that we're getting our points across. Most times we're not. And you have to take a minute and actually ask the question, are we on the same page? Do you understand what I'm saying? Is there anything that's missing with this assignment that I'm giving you? Right. And so when we're thinking about communication styles, there's how you like to communicate. But the more important thing for you to think about is how does your team like to be communicated with? So I'll say that again. How does your team like to be communicated with? We were on a call inside a private practice CEO and we talked about this. Every team member likes to be communicated with differently. Out of the hundreds of people that I have managed and led over the years, every single person I had to recognize, what do they need from me? For some people, it could be fine in a group setting, so like a team meeting. Some people I had to pull in after for a one on one. Some people I had to check in multiple times to make sure that they were good because sometimes they needed to sit in their emotions and process things. And even a one on one immediately after, they still weren't good. So we were sometimes having like a follow up, maybe like a week later, just to check in. People are dynamic. And I know I'm talking to the best audience because you understand this. You see this every single day in your practices, especially, as healthcare practitioners, right? So at the end of the day, how does your team like to be communicated with? So, how does Susie on your team like to be communicated with? Can you call her on the phone and say, hey, Susie, I need for you to go ahead and create X, Y, and Z for me? Can she take that information over the phone? Or does Susie need for you to pull her into a meeting, sit next to her, next to the computer, and actually walk her through what those tasks are? Right? Is there anything additional that Susie needs to make sure that she is being communicated with for how she can understand? Because if not, if you call Susie on the phone and that is not Susie's preferred communication style, Susie is going to jack up that assignment that you give her, guaranteed, because you did not take the time to actually think, how does Susie need to be communicated with? Sometimes it's going to take you time to delegate. But if you put in the time to actually delegate, if you are actually delegating with intention and delegating effectively, guess what? You're going to get back so much more time because you took the time to make sure that you were delegating appropriately, compared to if you delegate to Susie in the way that she can't even resonate with. You'll give it to her, 3 weeks might be wasted, or 2 days or 3 days, however long it takes for Susie to do this. She'll give it back to you, and then you'll have to redo it over anyway, right? So making sure that you're paying attention to the communication style for how your team likes to communicate. Now, us as leaders, we all have our preferred communication styles. For me, I'm a brainstormer. I love to brainstorm. I'm a relationship builder. It's one of my strengths. So if you put me in a room, I'm like, oh, let's talk about this. Well, what's the possibilities? And then plus two, I'm a person who likes to come up with solutions to problems. It's the reason why I do what I do. It's the reason why I've been able to go into really hot mess practices, jacked up practices, go in and refine them and fix them and structure them out and make sure that all my clients are set up for success, because I like to do that. That's my strength. So if you put me in a room, then I am going to be like, oh, yes, what about this? What about this? Let's do this. Have we talked about this? There's this opportunity here. There's this opportunity over there. My clients see this with me every single day. At the end of the day, I like to communicate that way. So you can put me in a meeting, put me in a meeting. I like it because I'm building relationships. Susie, she might not hate me. She might hate meetings. Please do not put me in a meeting. Call me on the phone. Tell me exactly what you need to do. Send me an email and I'll be good. So paying attention to, how do you like, how does your team like to communicate versus how do you like to communicate? It's not one and the same. Most times when people delegate, they delegate based on their communication style and based on how they like to be delegated to. And you have to get out of that. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is you have to establish a clear set of expectations for the delegated task. So I know we are all ambitious. We all have high standards of excellence. We all want to make sure that things are of quality, right? We're in healthcare. Quality matters. If we don't execute with quality, people get killed. People's lives are at risk. So we have to make sure that the expectations that you have, it's okay for you to have a standard of excellence. You have to check it when it becomes just unreasonable, right? And so at the end of the day, a lot of times this mindset shows up in like perfection. This is not about perfection. This is honestly about being okay with imperfection, because how you complete something or how you choose to complete something might be completely different than how your team decides to complete it, right? So as long as it's not trash, as long as it's not, someone's going to die, as long as it's not where the practice is going to burn down, or it's going to be a malpractice suit, or it's going to cause your reputation to just go bye-bye, please, please step out of the perfection. Please. You can have a standard of excellence. I'm not saying that you can't. This is where you write out like your always behaviors, what your values are for the practice, the values for the team. That's how you're able to get the team to have the buy-in that you need. For you, if you were going to go in and nitpick at an assignment that you've delegated and then give yourself a reason to not delegate, that's a problem, right? So you have to set clear expectations for the delegated task. So what is your expectation? Talk about it. I expect for this task to be executed with, if there's a template that you want to provide, if there's certain colors that need to be on it, if there's a certain feel that it needs to have, making sure that you're setting those expectations. The other thing with expectations is what is going to be the standard for where that team member knows that they've done this assignment successfully. A lot of times, what's on the other side of that. Are you communicating that to your team member, where they know at the end of it, like, oh, I killed this assignment, like I did such a good job with this assignment, if they're going to turn it in to you. If they don't know, if they're not sure, if they're not clear, if you didn't really set that expectation for what that assignment needs to look like for you to accept it, then they're just going to turn in whatever they think. You left them up to their own decision making. So as you get to know your team more, then you'll know, like, okay, I know I probably need to go in a little bit more in detail on this expectation because maybe they have a harder time with certain things. But in the beginning, when you're delegating, or in the beginning, when you're working maybe with like a new team member and you're still trying to get to know each other, over communicate. Make sure that you're very clear on the expectations. So that way that it can be done right the first time. Tip number 3, establish due dates and a follow-up schedule. So many people delegate, they will give assignments, they will just hand things over, and there's no due date. And then they wonder, well, a week has passed and that person never got it back to me. That's because in your head, you had a due date. You thought that it was going to be back to you by the end of the day. Your team member didn't. They had no idea. You never told them that you wanted it back at the end of the day. So if you have expectations, then you need to make sure that you are establishing a due date. If you want it back at the end of the day, if you want it back at the end of the week, if you want it back at the end of the month, communicate that. Make sure you're on the same page. Establish a due date. And then definitely establish a follow-up schedule. There is an assessment called Clifton Strengths, aka back in the day was Strengths Finders. And so essentially I had met with a team and we went through, everybody had did this assessment. So we talked about it. One of the team members, I loved her transparency. One of the team members said, sometimes when you delegate things to me, I have questions, but there's no follow-up or any meetings that are set. And I know that you're busy. So I don't want to bother you with my questions. And so the owner was frustrated because all she saw was like, I'm delegating this task to you and it's taking way too long. But she never set a clear due date, right? There was no like, we're going to follow up in a week, or if you have questions, you're not able to get it done with by the end of the day, or if you have questions, email me, call me. There was nothing of that. There was no, okay, let's meet next week to talk things through and to check on the progress of things, or let's have a quick phone call to talk about the progress, or send me an email to update me on the progress. There was nothing of that. So this poor team member is just sitting there in her I'm not good enough, honestly, like mindset, and is nervous to ask a question about I don't know how to do this. And it was like a cycle that they had gotten into, right? The owner's frustrated, rightfully so, because you're delegating, trying to again get freedom, and you're sitting there, but things aren't happening. And then the team member is sitting there. I'm not good enough. I'm going to get fired. I'm failing her, and I don't know what to do. And I want to do a good job, and so it's a cycle. So making sure that there are established due dates, and then what will the follow up schedule be, right? So that way that team member is set up for success and you're set up for success, so that way things can come back to you the way that they need to come back to you and according to the time frame that you want. So again, these 3 tips, just to review: know your team's communication style, establish a clear set of expectations for the delegated task, and then establish due dates and a follow-up schedule. So it's important for you to recognize this is not perfection. This is not about perfection. This is actually about accepting imperfection and being okay with that. If you can get things off of your plate, amazing. You can also, now I know we're talking more about business, but I do want to bring the personal side into this as well, like your personal life. Because remember, just because you own a business doesn't mean the second that you sit at your desk, or the second that maybe you are working with patients or clients, means that you turn off everything else that's happening in your personal life. So if you have laundry that's sitting there, if you have meals that need to be cooked, if you have a house that needs to be cleaned, like all of those things affect your energy, and they affect how effective you can be when it comes to you running the business. So when you're thinking about delegation in the business, that's a lot of what we talk about. But I also like to check folks, because is there something that you can delegate at home? Is there something that you can get off of your plate at home, so that way you aren't trying to run yourself ragged at home and in the business? So remember, you're one person. You are one person, and you cannot turn things off. It's impossible. You might be able to focus on the task, but all that stuff that's happening personally, it's still running in the background. It's still taking up energy. It's still taking up thoughts. So thinking about this and one and the same, is there things I need to get off my plate in the business, but are there things that I need to get off my plate at home? So for me, I have 2 older boys. They know how to cook, they know how to clean, they know how to make sure they do their laundry. And I've set that up by design over the years, because I was tired. I was so tired and trying to run around and driving, and here I am trying to, build practices and grow practices and, manage teams and lead teams, and again, hundreds of people. I had a team 100 plus, multiple locations. And so when people come to me and saying like, "Man, I'm tired. I am tired." I know you're tired. I know you're tired. And then I go home and I got my family talking about mom this, Brandy this. Hey, honey, babe, and it is a lot to have all of that coming at you. And then you're trying to build something that's amazing, right? And so you have to set yourself up for success. So looking at both, like, what do I need to delegate at home? What can I get off my plate at home? And then what do I need to delegate in the business? And you will save yourself so much time, so much energy. We're not meant to be superwoman. I have no desire whatsoever to be any kind of woman hero. That is not on my vision board. That is sitting to the left of me. That is not on my vision board. What is on my vision board is an out of office magazine. It's like a beach bag. that says out of office. What is on my vision board is a beautiful beach with palm trees and ocean views. What is on my vision board is the Ritz-Carlton yacht. Like that's what's on my vision board. All of those things for me represent freedom, right? So if I can have a business that is efficient and effective and can run without me, that's a win. If I can own my time, I want to own my time. That's a win for me. So delegating, there is freedom on the other side of delegating. I've experienced it with all the craziness that I had in practices. Hey, I was done it for. I had gotten to that point because I started to become so efficient at it, so effective at it. In my business, I'm growing my business. I am actively writing things down. So to the right of me, there is things to delegate with blue post-its. So that way I am continuously thinking like, okay, well, I'm working on this today. Let me write it down and let me get it off my plate. Who can I hire to get this off of my plate? Who can I go ahead and tap in order to speed us up? Who do I need inside of my business in order to make me more efficient and effective? Because I have no desire. I love what I do. Don't get me wrong. I love the clients that we work with. I don't want to get to a place of resenting it, right? I don't want to get to a place where I am resenting my business. And that is what will happen if you do not delegate accordingly, if you do not hire effectively, if you do not make sure that you're set up for success and take the time to do it. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. I sent out an email talking about there's a sign, there's a plaque that has gone from office to office with me, from practice to practice with me, and it says enjoy the journey. And it was one of my mentors at the very beginning, of my practice building journey, that she gave it to me because I was tired. I was crying every day. I had been hired post acquisition to fix this practice, to make sure that the team was engaged, things were efficient, things were effective. And it was hard. It was hard. The providers hated each other. They didn't, I mean, it would, like, you think that some of the things that you see in your practice, let me tell you, I have some war stories. I have war wounds. And so this plaque was always my saving grace. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. You are meant to do amazing work in this world. You are blessed because you woke up this morning. There are so many things that we can focus on that it just aren't going right. I want to challenge you. What is going right? What is going right? Because there's a lot of things that are going right. It's all a matter of perspective. I know you know that, right? So it's a matter of perspective. So enjoy the journey. Enjoy your growth. Enjoy being uncomfortable, because at the end of the day, when you look back, you're going to see everything that's happened. I was being set up for success, set up for the come up, set up for what the full vision is. So when you fast forward, when you close your eyes and you see yourself, wherever you're seeing yourself at, just know this moment in time is for you. It is to grow you, is to groom you, it's to mold you. It is to, definitely make sure that you are set up for success. So remember, there's freedom on the other side of delegation. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that it's not hard. It doesn't mean that it's just going to be easy peasy. All sunshine, roses, unicorn, rainbows, and just the best song ever. It's going to challenge you. It's going to stretch you. However, when you get it, that is where you will see sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, roses, the beautiful song, like all the stuff. So I hope that this episode helps. I hope it helps. And let me know definitely how it's helping, especially if you get notification of this episode through email. Like, I see all of it. So keep me posted. All right. You have a great day. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.